So to continue on this point, we're on number 5. If in order to experience something I have to be experiencing it under ideal conditions, then what it really means is my capacity is low. For example, if I was to say, you know, I can't read this newspaper until I first have a coffee and a cigarette. If I don't have a cup of coffee and don't smoke a cigarette, it's just a piece of paper with a bunch of words all over it. I need my morning cup of coffee. I need my glass of wine. I need sex 5 times a week. Whatever it is. The notion of need to create some ideal situation in order to experience something means the capacity is low. Okay? So the concept of capacity when it comes to stillness really means how to attain stillness under any kinds of conditions. Without the candles and the incense and the nice music and everybody dressed in white and everybody being spiritual and new agey and quiet. No phones ringing, no babies crying. And quiet inside. You see? It's low capacity, limited capacity. So naturally, what do we do with the majority of the planet's population now that we're judging as having low capacity? Low attention capacity. So if this is the judgment, and this judgment is meted out upon the majority of the population, and we presuppose and we prejudge this limited capacity, then what would we say? We say we have to dumb down to their level because they have such low capacity. We have to dumb down the teachings, dumb down the language, dumb down the approach. And so we are sensing and prejudging this as truth. And then we create it and recreate it. And they, of course, absorb it more and more and more. They absorb it as, I've got such limited capacity. I can only do something under ideal or perfect conditions. And since I'm not having those perfect conditions, there's no sense in even trying to do something, because it ain't going to work. How about getting someone to treat their own migraine headache without drugs? How about helping someone see how they can heal their cancer without radiation or chemotherapy or surgery? How to have a couple see how they can heal their relationship without all kinds of other dramas. All of these are aspects of expanded capacity, you see? Now, if you're going to teach those who have already been stigmatized as having minimal capacity, particularly the capacity of attention itself, how do you do so? So this is how we move into stage 5 of stillness. Okay? Stage 5 of stillness is the capacity that comes from progressive experiences of stillness and the clarity therein. When one comes to realize that transition process into stillness, one is developing heightened sensitivity, heightened awareness. Like a conductor's well-trained ears, who can hear every musician in the orchestra, who can hear the spaces between the music, who can hear the tempos between the beats. That learning, that acuity, that sensitivity of detection is what's being fostered as one is witnessing this transition into that stillness. And as they are witnessing that transition into this stillness, they become aware of these moments of clarity. And then as they become aware of these moments of clarity, they realize that just as I'm having a moment of clarity, I'm having something present itself to me. Like my lifelong problem. Or like whatever's pressing me right now that has caused me so much stress that seemed to be unsolvable. And it's like there's the answer right there, plain as day. Oh, because I'm in clarity. So clarity presents its own reward. Clarity is not the same as stillness. In attainment of stillness, clarity presents. And as soon as clarity presents, the subject for clarity presents. As soon as I am aware, then problems present themselves for immediate resolution. You see? Thus, it makes no sense for you to be going around beating yourself up trying to analyze something if you're not in stillness, if you're not in clarity. It makes no sense to go around asking your friends and your homies and your teachers and counselors and your pollsters and your fans, what should I do? Because they're not in clarity. And you're not in clarity, so whatever gets offered as an answer about what to do is not right. Because it will not have emerged from a state of clarity. It's emerging from a state of busyness, soliciting opinions, experiments, trying something on. See, well, how does that sound like? Well, how does that feel? I like it. I think that's what I'm going to do. Oh, they just gave me another idea. Oh, I like that one too. Now how am I going to choose? I'm creating drama. Because I'm not in clarity. You see? So you teach this process of awareness focused on the transition into stillness. And as that is being taught, the emergence of clarity comes. And because the attention is now focused on the transition of that subtle process, there comes an awakening to the emergence of clarity, even if it is very momentary. And in that transition of awakening to the emergence of clarity, suddenly there is something to be clear about. And the great revelation that, wow, there was the answer all along. All I had to do was just be still. You see? I didn't have to think about it. I didn't have to pull out my old math formulas. I didn't have to do all of these other dramatic things and energy and time-consuming things. The answer's right there. So now that that process has been experienced, the great guiding teacher now becomes a gentle seducer. How'd you like to experience that clarity all the time? How'd you like to experience that clarity with so much ease? How'd you like to experience that clarity instantaneously, under any kind of environmental conditions? So you don't have to get stressed out. So like, I'm thinking about something, I'm about to decide something, and oh shoot, something just happened, it distracted me. Or somebody's nagging me for this and this. Or I'm so stressed and overwhelmed because I got so much everything else going on. Or I only got 10 minutes, and it takes me 9.5 minutes before I can even just sort of relax and there's not enough time to think about what it is that I need to think about. So you can introduce, through this gentle, loving seduction process, the invitation to clarity under practically any condition. That is capacity. That is how capacity expands. Now, if you were a musician, think about it this way. I have a brother who's a master flautist. Okay? Master flautist. But I remember in the earlier years when he was playing his flute, performing in concerts, solos and things of this sort. But he would say, it takes me 2 hours to warm up before I can actually feel comfortable playing the flute. That's how long it takes me to warm up, to feel comfortable and fluid. As he's doing these scales up and down and all of this other kind of thing. I said, wow. What if you only had an hour to practice? He said, I wouldn't even get through the warm-up phase. A few years later, after a little bit more teaching from some other masters and his continued exploration, he began to discover. Also a little bit of meditation became part of his practice. But he began to discover how that 2 hours of warm-up could be 1 hour, and then half an hour, and then 15 minutes, and ultimately less than 5 minutes. And he said his goal was to be able to just reach over there, open up his case, put together his flute, and immediately perform. That is capacity, you see? When your capacity to experience a desired state can become instantaneous, then you are truly living and expressing this expanded capacity. So if you start off with someone who has this ingrained process called a flitting attention span, you induce them with the prospect of having the capacity to attain clarity, which is instantaneous, which is very quick. So now, what was considered their liability of being able to move and shift their attention so much is actually becoming an asset. If they can move their attention span, keeping it short, and shift their focus of attention, yet shifting that focus of attention in a state of clarity. Internal stillness means it's not chaotic, means it's not random, means it's highly, highly efficient, means it's highly, highly, highly intelligent and dynamic. So now you can teach them how to move from that debilitated state of this tendency into a much expanded, highly productive state of this tendency. And the second tier gain of such capacity is the capacity to slow down. Whereas most others may have begun with the slowness, the gentleness. It just feels good. I like feeling good. I like listening to the music. I like going to satsang in the ashrams and working on my spirituality. And if it takes me 10 years, it's okay because it still feels good all the way. It's a long and slow approach, right? No worries. No struggle. But the one whose tendency is to move, How about, I was such a fast learner. It just took me a long time to learn how to be slow. How to learn to go slowly. That was a great expansion of my capacity. That outward display of the stillness, of pacing myself so that in conjunction with the environment around me, so would the environment and its manifestations of minimal motion, minimal activity, and minimal disturbance, I could also merge lightly and gently into those environments, such as to talk to the trees, to talk to the whales, to talk to the ocean, the clouds. So now this expansion of capacity is actually being expressed and experienced in terms of many, many, many more connections and experiences of intimacy which were precluded by the hyperdynamic state of the individual and what ways they were previously conditioned. So capacity expands, and it is manifest as the experience of clarity under ever-increasing variable circumstances and environments, with the clarity the result of the attainment and the sustainment of the internal state of stillness, such that even if the external state appears to be hyperdynamic, a ballerina, a gymnast, a martial artist, a samurai swordsman, with all of that dynamic external activity, they are still on the inside. The greatest ones. You see, the burning monk with the flames engulfing their body is in stillness on the inside. So these are aspects of that relationship between clarity and capacity. The more that this is experienced, the more capacity is expanding. Then comes the emergence into the sixth stage. As we emerge into the sixth stage, however, there is a reciprocating validation of all of the four previous stages to the one who has now experiencing this expanded capacity. This greater capacity is allowing me to see that it is clarity that I have sought all along. And my need for clarity in communicating with others, in communicating with myself, in embarking upon my dharma, my mission, in sharing in the experience of intimacy itself requires such clarity. And that clarity needed to come from my stillness practice. And thus, to perform as I am to perform in the sharing of myself and the undertaking of my mission and my dharma, my purpose in life, and for that to be effective, requiring such clarity, I must maintain my stillness practice. And through this maintainment of my stillness practice, the declaration of the importance of my stillness is even more emphasized. And that declaration of the importance of my stillness practice becomes more and more the extension of who I am and why I am. So you can see how stage 5 recapitulates and reaffirms stage 4 and stage 3 and stage 2 and stage 1. Make sense? This is what happens in holodynamic learning and holodynamic organization in the universe. if you create something which evolves into something else, that evolution should also reaffirm all of the intermediate stages. That becomes the process. What ultimately results in toroidal dynamics in the cosmos, but also results in the sustainability of anything which comes into existence which has an intent and a programming endowment to be upon a journey of discovery, coming from a state of less awareness of what it is and why it is, into a journey of discovery, and thus a return to a much higher sense of self and purpose, and then ultimately the return to source. Now we go onward to stage 6. As these dynamics have been taking place regarding capacity, clarity, attained stillness, declaration, identity and purpose, what happens is there is the emerging awareness of the difference between oneself and one's experiences and that of those majority around oneself. What happens when you have a sense that you have so much more capacity? So much more capacity than what? Than what I had before as my sense of my capacity? Yes. Comparison and contrastment with how I was before now. And at the same time, going back to our analogy about the fences, what I have compared to my neighbor, to that which is other than me, or other than mine. My capacity having grown so much, and I begin to witness those around me with such limited capacity. So one witnesses this difference. One has grown into a process of attainment, of rapid expansion of capacity and ease of attainment of clarity under so many and more and more and more variegated circumstances and situations and environments, to be able to still be in clarity, an example of rarefied capacity personified in this one who is committed to practice of stillness. Looking around and seeing, guess what? The vast majority of this world is not about stillness. The vast majority of this world is about busyness. The vast majority of the culture that is inculcated and promoted in this world is the culture of confusion and conflict, not the culture of clarity. You be confused so that you can have anxiety. You be conflicted so that you can have autoimmunity occurring inside of you and create all kinds of diseases. You be so conflicted and then paranoid that you have to go to war and try to preempt someone else who you perceive beforehand to be a threat to you, or to that which you claim to own. Somebody on the other side of the fence. And so, the element of contrast comes. And as that element of contrast presents itself, you have the awareness that your capacity so far exceeds their demonstrated capacity. And your experience of clarity so more frequently appears and sustains itself, and you witness their lack of clarity. And you listen to their language, and all day long they're busy saying, I don't know, and I don't know, and I don't know, and I don't know. And I guess, and I suppose. They're so busy saying, you stupid, no good, you're worthless, you idiot. I'm an idiot. I'm a no good. I'm a whatever. And these are all representations of a sense of restrained and constrained and contracted, limited capacity, and the elusive, limited clarity, and the agitated state of anxiety and angst, which is just opposite to that internal stillness. So as you become aware of this, and as those whom you are teaching become aware of this, then how does something shift? It shifts, and into what does it shift? It shifts into stage 6, which is compassion.